feel pressured to have to go.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
And we're on.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the September Curriculum Committee meeting. My name is Matt Marshall. I'm the committee chair. I'd like to introduce everybody else.
Diane Potter.
Veronica Babcock. Angela Hardy, Director of Curriculum.
Angela?
Okay, so our first item on the agenda is, oh, I need the time. Is the spring student achievement data. We tabled this last June because we got talking about other important matters. Terry, could you enable participant screen sharing?
Sure.
That'd be great. And so I will share the spring results, provide an overview of what's coming in the timeline for the fall assessments.
You should be good.
And you are welcome to ask any questions at any time. You do not have to wait till the end. Can I do this right? Yes. Okay. So for spring assessments, we have streamlined it as much as possible now to ensure that students are not spending, we're limiting the amount of time they're spending on assessments and increasing the amount of time they're working in instruction. There are some parameters that are set by the state, and that's for the state assessment, which used to be a spring assessment and is now a fall and spring assessment so that they can measure growth as well as a proficiency or achievement. But the benefit of that is that they are using an assessment, the NWEA, that we have historically used. So in that way, we are still streamlining our assessment resources. So as you can see, we use the NWEA, which is the Northwest Evaluation Association, in reading and in language usage from K through 10 or 11 this past year. And then we have launched the Early Bird Literacy Screener in kindergarten and first grade this past year. And that provides much more diagnostic data to classroom teachers about the foundational literacy skills that students are working towards to become readers. So it gives us much more specific information than the NWEA reading can. And that's why we've added that one in. It's really fun. The kids really love it. It's designed by the Boston Children's Hospital and the Florida Center on Reading Research. And there are speaking components. The students speak into the computer and listening components where they respond based on what they hear with visual displays. In math, we use the iReady math diagnostic and the NWEA in grades 3 through 5. And the reason why we maintain iReady is because it has a nice alignment to our math programming. And it also provides data to a personalized learning platform for students to ensure that they have some supplemental online math games and support tools to use that tailors based on the results on their assessment. So it starts them where they're ready instead of making them move through all kinds of math steps that they either already know or are too hard for them. And then in science, the state has contracted with a company called New Meridian, and they have updated the science assessment to be online instead of paper-based. The first year was a pilot. This past year, we should have data, although we haven't received it yet. We thought we were getting it over the summer. They were doing benchmarking this summer. So I'm still looking into when that might be released. We historically have done really well in science, and we're a little nervous about the transition to online instead of paper and pencil-based science assessments. So we'll see. So I don't have any data on science yet, but that'll come when we get it from the state. So remember, this is only 1 year after the spring was only 1 year after we moved back into full, non-disrupted as much as possible learning. And some of our students, it was, disrupted for 1.5 years. And so without that continuity, some students really struggled with sustaining the learning sustaining the information they learned. And so there was a lot of reteaching happening, which reduces progress towards end of year standards. So generally speaking, our reading proficiency across the district was lower than typical pre-pandemic. Not surprising though. And our foundational literacy skills were lower in grades like 1 and 2, which is also not surprising since their kindergarten and first grade years were disrupted, which are so foundational, right, to learning. However, our kindergarten did well with their 1 year of school. And our vocabulary acquisition is generally up, which is something we've been watching for a number of years. So that was kind of a bright spot. I just use this as just a quick grounding. It's just another way to recognize that there are many components of literacy learning that help a student become a skilled reader. And it is up to us as a system, which we have done, to weave all those parts together into a systematic, explicit instruction. So in the past, we've had what people refer to as the reading wars, where systems would say students need phonics instruction. And then other systems would say, no, they need whole language instruction, which is sort of, they'll make sense of it if they have access to authentic text or what literature you'd find in a library, in other words. And what the research has indicated over many years, which is now being, the most recent research is being referred to as the science of reading, is that they actually need both. They need systematic explicit instruction in word recognition or phonics and phonological awareness, and specific strategies in how to move through sounds to make words. But then they also need access to authentic text, dialogic experiences or speaking and listening experiences around text, specific vocabulary instruction, and shared experiences through community. One develops a framework of understanding. So our changes over the last few years in our literacy curriculum materials is working to achieve this representation here. So I'm really, like, 3 years of non-disrupted learning, I am hoping after 3 we can start to see some real, like, positive gains and a trend line that's showing that there's an impact. And so this chart here, and there's not a ton of charts because I tried to, like, recognize, like, how much can we take in at a time. This is the reading. So this is just fall to spring. A lot of times I look at, like, a full year, fall to fall or spring to spring, but this is just one school year. The diamonds, the yellow diamonds represent the system, the new NWEA system, in looking at our fall data, projected our students to land in the spring. So based on the year-end standards and where they started, this is the projection of where they should have landed as a unit. But the blue bars are where the growth is actually observed. So you can see, like, 4th grade hit the mark. 2nd, 3rd, and 5th came awfully close. We did not assess the kindergartners in the fall, so there won't be growth data in the spring. We don't use NWEA in the fall with them, they're too young, so we hold off. So as you can see, the widest gaps in growth, which is a little different from proficiency, is in the middle school. Notably the 8th grade group, the 9th grade group, and the 10th and 11th grade groups, because that's actually negative growth. to be fair to the high school, this is the first full year, this one was the first full year of implementation of NUIA. They're used to the SAT. They haven't had measures in 9th and 10th grade unless students opted into the PSATs. They didn't, they're learning what to expect from the assessment, both the educators and the students. And as you get through 8th to 12th grade, the incremental growth, the growth will be very incremental. So the goal here is to dig into this data and try to figure out in what areas did the students collectively not perform as well on, so that we can check that against the units of study we offer and see if there's a gap in our curriculum. So that's the first step, rather than like deeming a particular grade span poor performing, because this is their first actual year of data fall to spring. And so we need to kind of look at this over time and see if we can change that measure. So this would be what I would consider sort of our baseline data, where we're starting from. The other thing to note is where the least amount of growth is in 11th grade. That is also the grade where students do take the SAT for entrance to college. It is a grade where most students who are enrolled in AP are in 11th grade. Some 10th graders take AP advanced placement courses. A fair portion of 11th graders do, and their exam period is around the same time as this spring assessment period. And there isn't a lot of wiggle room around that. We don't test them on the same dates, certainly, but it's in the same 3-week window. So there's a little bit of test fatigue going on for sure, and stress. So the state has actually made an adjustment for this coming year that we can count 10th grade instead of 11th grade as our state assessment year. So we're still determining if we're going to assess 11th grade in the spring or not.
So just a quick observation, tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I think obviously second to a degree, but 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, even 7th, there is a dip there, obviously, from fall of 2021 to the spring of spring of 2022, or how's that?
Yeah, so you're expected to grow more in the early years than you are in the later years. So that's why the diamonds matter so much.
Right. So to my point, I guess that I want to make, you can see pre-pandemic where the kids are now in 3rd, 4th, and 5th, right? The foundation that they received when they were in K through 2
was probably impacted.
Was really actually probably pretty good considering where they ended up.
Yeah, so we're making up for some lost learning. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, did I explain that right?
The one thing I would like to note is that 3rd grade, even while it's very slightly below expected outcome, that's probably one of our better growth years for that particular grade level that we've seen in a while.
Would you say 3rd grade?
Yeah, 3rd grade's always been it's one of those tricky years. Students have learned to read to a degree by 2nd grade. And 3rd grade, the complexity jumps quite a bit in the end of your expectations. And so if you haven't mastered strong literacy word reading skills by the beginning of 3rd grade, and the complexity jumps, it's a really tough year for kids to reach expectations. And so we tend to have a dip, our district tends to have a dip in both growth and a proficiency in 3rd grade, and then we work on pulling it up by 4th grade, and then it dips again in the middle of middle school, and then we work on pulling it up. So it's kind of exciting that 3rd grade is actually not significantly different from their projected growth. That's more promising than we anticipated.
If considering the previous 2 years, they were remote.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I meant. I think I've said the opposite.
I heard you differently, but then I got there.
Yeah.
So
Who sets up the diamonds of the
statisticians through NWEA.
Oh.
based on like millions of students who are set into this system.
Mm-hmm.
So Angela, just for the general public's knowledge, when you talk about testing, It's a test that's done on any given day.
Yeah, that's a good question. So this particular test, this one is the reading test. So it takes 30 to 60 minutes, depending on the age of the student and depending on their willingness to engage in it.
Right.
It is an online assessment. So it's a student in front of a computer and there are a series of questions, but this one is adaptive. So as students answer the questions presented to them correctly, the questions get harder. As students answer them incorrectly, they get easier. And then for about 3 questions, and then they start calibrating back up. And they just keep doing that through the assessment. Now, the student doesn't know if they're answering them correctly or incorrectly. There's no like response on the computer. It just asks the next question. In reading, there tends to be passages for the older kids, third and up. And then the younger kids, it's much shorter. There are parts of it read to students in the early elementary. So there's a lot of listening, which is what you expect. Listening comprehension comes before reading comprehension. So you want them to be able to hear and follow along in order to answer the questions.
Yeah,
Does that help?
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of one day, one test data.
Yeah, so right. And so that's why we have multiple measures, right? We have small, what we call formative or checks for understanding throughout the classroom experience. And we have what we call more summative, which is more like projects, tests, and lower grades that looks a little different, applied learning, where they're putting different parts of their learning together and demonstrating understanding. And then we have a series of these sorts of measures. And you look at the whole picture to figure out where the child is, because sometimes there's an anomaly or a clicker.
So does the state take those other things into account or just the test?
Just the test.
Yeah, so that's the
Well, I
concern.
mean, the state takes attendance, graduation rates, assessment data, growth and proficiency data, staff qualifications. That's what that whole dashboard is that they have. And we have the dashboard linked on our site. So there are all those measures that they look at more now than they used to. Historically, they would only look at this data. For us, the other reason the state has adjusted, so it's not just proficiency in the spring or achievement, it's also growth. So are you also making growth? So those are 2 measures now, which is a little more sophisticated than they used to do. It does require that the state provides guidance on the fall assessment and the spring assessment. We opt to do a winter assessment for most grade levels. And that gives us a mid-year check to see, are we making progress? And then kind of recalibrate and plan for the rest of the year. So it does help us think that through. Are we on track or do we need to make some adjustments?
Does every child take the winter one? Because some schools only have like the bottom 20th% take it in the winter.
Yeah, we right now have everyone, but that's a conversation we're having once we feel like our what we call tier 1 and 2 assessments, which are those smaller checks for understanding, are a little bit more consistent and robust. And then we feel like we could probably change our decision around the winter assessments. But for now, with the exception of kindergarten only takes it in the spring.
Yeah.
Now.
So other than giving us an idea where we're at with assessment and data and growth and such, what else does this impact? Funding? Does it impact state support somehow?
Yeah, if our scores consistently are negative in certain areas, or we don't have a 95% participation rate across the district, then we would be coded as a needs support school or a tier 3 school, and we would be receiving specialized coaching from the Department of Education on how we could improve our performance. But right now we don't have that. And we have been flagged a couple times for like a unique school here and there in the district, but it is all due to chronic absenteeism.
Okay.
So that's
It's good to know.
yeah.
Okay.
Rather than scores.
By the end of the year, I'm not good at these things and they don't stay in my mind.
That's okay.
But at the end of the year, the school budget, you know, when we sent out that brochure to people and it shows where we stand in per pupil expenditures. And so I'd like to slowly become clear at what we need to do in our, you know, is there something, you know, we don't need to necessarily, where we need to put our efforts.
Yeah, we can certainly work on that understanding over the course of this year. And then raise it to the full board too. The problem in terms of connecting the current data with the budget process is that the budget process is really rocking and rolling in March. And our final data sets are coming out in June, which is like days before the big vote, right? So that's why we have to kind of keep the data conversation moving at all times. That's also why I do a mid-year, I do tend to do a mid-year check. What's our status? What does it look like in terms of growth? But we also try to look at data in like, how are we doing long-term? This one, because of the pandemic, I didn't do that as much. I just sort of gave you a snapshot, but I will do that again by the spring.
But as for now, and in recent times, the state hasn't come in to help us because we were below.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is, so the early bird in kindergarten has 13 subtests, which the kids know as 13 games. They're very short games. They love them. Pip is a little bird. That's the early bird. As you can see, his name is Pip. And he kind of brings them on this really cute game board, and they meet a new animal at each game. And then once they complete that module, they earn something so that Pip can eventually sail his boat across a little pond at the end. We do practice with the students ahead of time so they kind of know, because what they ask them to say and stuff just feels a little different. So as you can see, the top left is one of the modules is around vocabulary, and that's an area we've been looking at in our district because we historically have not performed particularly well in vocabulary, and vocabulary tends to signify background knowledge, literacy, long-term literacy learning and gains. So it's an indicator of that we want to pay attention to and work on increasing. So as you can see here, we had 50% of our students coming into kindergarten with some decent vocabulary skills, which was great, and 50% not. And then by the spring, with the first year of really measuring it this way, we have 67.5%. So we made gains, and we have only 8.9% partially meeting. So basically the pie split the partially meets by quite a bit. And we did not make a lot of gains with our students who currently do not meet. So that's the part we're trying to figure out, like, and at the classroom level and the building level, we're looking at who are those exact students, what else do we know about them, and how is that influencing the vocabulary instruction. We also know that students need to be read to at home every night, and 15 minutes of reading every single night will increase their access to vocabulary significantly. It's by like tens of thousands of words in like a number of years. So that's an at-home strategy, and what we're working on is what are our school strategies that we can do to support them. So we'll continue to look at that over time. This is a little busy. But just generally speaking, you can see the grade levels on the left, grades 2 through 11. NWEA also tracks vocabulary. The orange is our fall scores. So if you don't worry about the numbers and you just kind of look at the orange bars, and then you say, did they make growth by the spring?
What is up with the high school kids?
So at least it's consistent,
I know,
right?
I get
so
it.
Vocabulary is actually a part of the reading assessment. So it's only a 1 point difference, but at that level for NWEA, a 1 point RIT range is actually a difference. It is a significant difference. They should be going 1 point up, not 1 point down. So that's something the teachers are looking at. But if you look at second grade, they made a 10 point gain collectively. That's very exciting. And third grade is the most exciting to me because again, that's the year that tends to dip. And they made a 9-point gain, just over a 9-point gain. So we're really excited about that. And seventh grade made a gain when historically they don't always. So that was really exciting.
So with the pandemic and the learning loss concern, what, I don't think I'm confused, but what grades do we really need to pay attention to when it comes to stuff like this? Is it third and fourth and fifth?
Depends on how I feel that day. No. I always think like K-3 is the foundational, but what we're noticing is there's a lot of 4-8 students who are missing some core foundational pieces, and it's not all due to the pandemic.
Okay.
Because some of them, it's just, we missed them somehow in the beginning. And some of that is due because we didn't have systematic explicit phonics instruction built in until 3 years ago. So those students in that 4 to 8 range didn't have it unless a teacher happened to put that into place because of that person's knowledge and background, not because of our system. Our system has it now set up. It's systematic, explicit, routine instruction that builds across the year and over years. That's going to influence our group of 4 through 8 students in the future. So it's sort of a little of everywhere right now.
Okay.
And trying to just hone in on what's the biggest need at that grade span.
Okay.
And this is again, just the way we look at things. We look at less complex to more complex. So in that early bird literacy screener, for example, I draw out things that are maybe on the less complex side to see like, those are great starting points. We can't get to the more complex stuff unless students are secure in the less complex stuff. So in the past, I've shared with you like our rhyming scores, because we ideally would love kids coming in with some, coming into school with some skills in oral rhyming. Like why we used to do Humpty Dumpty and all the nursery rhymes and jump rope songs when we were kids. And so we have more students coming in with less background in rhyming, so they are introduced to it in school. And so that's a little bit of a trick. And our speech identification rate is particularly high in this district. So maybe some of it just producing the rhyme might be more of the issue than recognizing the rhyme, because speech might be getting in the way. So we're working on coming up with some strategies, not just to rely on identification through speech, but on increasing some specific strategies in the classroom to maybe make that more of a routine practice. It's what we call our tier 1 approaches. So this one's again, like, look at the first 3 bars, that's your letter sounds. So this past year, we did increase proficiency in letter sounds. There's 42 sound groups that were sounds or sound groups that we're looking at. And we decreased our does not meet group by more than half, which is great. That yellow bar is the bar I'd like to turn to green, like that group of students in first grade. That's what I'd like. We have changed our scope and sequence, which is what means how we introduce sounds and tie it to the rest of our literacy this year to see if we might be able to catch some more of this, get more students proficient in letter sounds. Our letter names, we also cut the does not meet group in half, and our rhyming group is still fairly stable. So that's when we're thinking about less complex, these are all the more less complex before, as you can see here, before they can get into blending sounds, understanding syllables, and starting to put sounds into words. So these we kind of want to pay attention to year over year and see if we're making progress with some of the adjustments we're making in our curriculum. And then like here's a little more complex, like blending sounds into words. So at the end of year, the kindergarten group, about half of them can do it. And then the other half, it's like split in their levels of proficiency. But what's super exciting is by first grade, almost all of the students are able to do this. So as long as we think of this as a continuum and that we're paying attention to those who cannot yet, and providing targeted instruction for those students, additionally, or supplemental instruction, then I think by the end of first grade, we're in a stronger place. So that's promising. Language usage is a test that the state required this past year, but isn't requiring this coming year. So we are using it in the middle school this coming year because we do want to start tracking that at the middle school especially. So that's things like grammar, syntax, there's a whole, but language mechanics, grammar, that sort of stuff. We have what we've rewritten the curriculum in the middle school. We started calling it the grammar boot camp. And then they'll carry it through all the units of study, and we're differentiating by grade level. So we want to see if that makes a difference. So we decided to keep this particular assessment in for the middle school, even though the state isn't requiring it. The second grade data is powerful, but it only includes half of our second graders. That's why I was like, whoa, what happened? But 4 out of 8 classes took the language usage test and 4 out of 8 classes accidentally did not. And we didn't, it's like I don't know how I missed it. And it was missed at all kinds of levels. And when we caught it, it was like the day after the assessment window closed and we weren't allowed to take that assessment anymore. But for the 4 that took it, it's powerful, but we can't guarantee that that's an adequate picture of our district. And then again, here you are, it's much more complex in 3rd grade. So if we hadn't been teaching those systematically up through until recently, then that's where the discrepancy is in the growth. It's so interesting to see 4, 5, and 6 is on track. 7 and 8 is off, so that we're curious about the impact this will have now with this new lesson plan that we have in place. And again, 9, 10, and 11 are digging into the data. It's the first time they've ever seen it. So we're learning.
That's why 9th grade is.
Yeah, 0 growth. They stayed stable from fall to spring. But again, we need to look, we're looking specifically at the minutia to figure out what's going on. And it's only one snapshot. So we need to see this fall what's happening, and then, so on and so forth. In math, the same sort of idea, so the same chart. We only assess at the grade levels the state requires using this one because we have another assessment. We've been working really hard in math. And so this one was a little bit more disheartening because you can see 6th grade is making the growth and no other grade level hit the mark, despite the efforts we've made in math. But the way we talked to some outside people to try to get some perspective, and that concrete sequential instruction that's part of as braided in with the conceptual understanding took a real hit during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And we teach conceptually and then build in the procedures, and a lot of students learn the procedures at home because that's how we all used to learn, but then miss the concept behind it. And so if you're ever introduced to then the concept behind it, or the same procedure gets a little bit more complicated and you don't understand the rationale behind it, then you can't proceed. And so it's no fault of anyone. It was just like the daily routine experiences were totally disrupted, and we had lots of different approaches to how we teach math going on at the same time, and no shared language. So we anticipate that was a problem, and that this mirrors a lot of the national landscape. So while it's not great, it did relieve a little bit of our heartburn to recognize, like, okay, this is sort of the norm at the moment. Can we reverse this?
I kind of expected this out of data from our math, because I think historically as a district, we've kind of struggled with math a little bit. I might be wrong, but I think historically we have.
Yep.
So this isn't surprising to me at all. I think is the farther we get out from remote learning, I think you're gonna see this particular slide will be better. I don't think you're gonna see it get worse. But it may take a little while to get there, but I think it'll be much better in the fall.
Yeah, I will say I'm a little bit nervous. Our middle school team is working really hard. And they don't have a math coach this year because we were unable to fulfill that open position. So we have contracted with Maine Math and Science Alliance to build in some external coaching support. So they will have some coaching, but it's not the same as having someone in your building every day helping you out. But they are rallying together as a team, and they'll be working with me and the external supports to, to try to work towards this. But it is definitely like a little bit of a hardship for them, given that they got used to having a coach in year one.
I hope they realize that it's not them.
The open position is absolutely not them. It's yeah.
I mean, the data isn't as a result of their inability to teach.
Oh, right.
that's kind
It's
of-
more of a systematic
Right.
systems thing. I sort of look at this as a system rather than like individual teachers, but teachers do deserve support, and that's where I was trying to reference.
So you're still hoping you might get one?
We won't get one this year, but that's why I've put in additional supports for them. So that there'll be some continuous ongoing both learning and in classroom support. It just won't be the same as having everyone there daily. So this one's a little different than you've seen before. iReady is our K-5 tool. And so they help us with some of our data analysis. And here, there's varying degrees of green and varying degrees of red. Okay, so the green is good and red is, we'd rather not be in red. So out of 751 students who were here both in the fall and the spring, we have more than that in elementary, but some weren't here in the fall or some weren't here in the spring. So the common group of students, you can see that we went from 12% proficiency to 47% proficiency. Super. We'd love to get over that 50% mark. And we went from 27% at 2 to 3 grade levels below to, I think it's 9%. So that's a third that dropped by 2/3. It's a third of the original. So that's highly promising. Our winter growth data, so typical growth from fall to winter was not hurt at all. So we actually increased year over year. We checked this. So that's good. It's winter to spring that we had a heavy hit. We don't know what happened. Fall to winter, we were making great gains. January to June, our gains dwindled this past year. This one, if you just look at, see the grade levels across the top. So the first 2 bars are fall to winter of fall to spring of kindergarten. That there is no grade level below, so they can't get red. So that is very promising. First grade is promising because we dropped the does not meet by 23%. Second grade, we also reduced it by 31%, the does not meet category. And you see that trend all the way along, right? So we're making gains. Certainly, our issue is in that middle group, the yellow group, which is just below grade level. That's the group that we really need to move into grade level, when they really need to turn green. So, and I mean, of course, all of them, but that yellow bar should not be as wide as it is. And so that's the part we're trying to figure out over time is like, how do we do that more efficiently? And then this is promising. Here's the national norm. So iReady has about as many students as NWEA in their national bank. So they have all the same statisticians and stuff. So the national norm pre-pandemic is the first bar. The national year-to-date last spring is the second bar. So you can see nationally, more students does not meet and fewer students are proficient. And then ours at that same period of time is the third bar. So in terms of proficiency levels, we're actually on par in the elementary school level with the nation. And we're below, which means we're exceeding expectations in terms of the does not meet group of students. We have a much lower percentage of students in does not meet than the nation does. So that's also really promising. Again, it's the yellow group. That's the part that we need. That's like, we got to do some work there to figure out how to shift that. So it is a little bit promising. There are some bright spots.
Yeah.
This is the part we'd like to see change. This is our fall to spring growth profile. We really want to get in the upper right-hand quadrant. We're not in the lowest quadrant. I mean, we're in low performance, low growth, but we're right on the cusp. And we need to shift over to the right. But this is just after the first year of coming out of the pandemic. So we're hoping we'll make some gains. And you can see, even though third grade was making great progress, they're still one of our lowest groups in that profile. Pretty tight though. So this one is not a pretty chart. You'll get the idea though. NUIA runs on RIT ranges. So obviously sixth grade should be lower than seventh grade, that should be lower than eighth grade, okay? So look from left to right rather than top to bottom. And you can see in sixth grade, there's steady promise. The sixth grade cohort, not the sixth grade group from 2018 over years. It's like each time in sixth grade. The seventh grade group seems to be kind of up and down, but holding fairly steady. So we'd like that red line to continue up. But the eighth grade group is a challenge. They have stopped looping this year. So they won't have the same teachers for 2 years in math, so that the teachers can focus just on one grade level, the math at one grade level, and get really, really good at just that grade level. It's a different theory of action. Instead of working with the same group of students over 2 years and getting to know the students so well, we're flipping it and saying, you're going to know the students well because they're in a school of 400 something students, and we're actively engaged in all of our school-based activities. We're going to get to know our content really well and work with our students to get that grade level expectation. So it's just a different theory of action. And we're going to see over the next few years if we can flip that eighth grade number or that trend line back up. This is again K5. So percent of students with improved placements from the fall. The most excellent piece of this chart is that students who were 2 grade levels below in the fall or 3 grade levels or below in the fall starting, more than 50% of them increased their placement. So they went from 3 to 2 or more, 2 to 1 and 1 to grade level. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Or they could have jumped 2 levels. This part doesn't say, but that is promising. That's very exciting. And that's all I have for data. Because I figured you could only handle so much at once. But if you have questions that you'd like different things, please let me know because I can prepare that. The fall assessments we're just starting is again, early bird literacy screener, except for we added pre-K. It's only 5 little game-based assessments and they don't speak into it at all at that grade level until the end of the year. And we were part of the validation study last year. So we already kind of have a sense of what that looks like. And then I added a couple more of the local ones, just so you know, we do things like concepts of print for everyone, spelling inventories, and we're adding in the oral reading fluency to get another measure of students' readiness for certain skills. So those are the things that are happening this month or with NUIA at the beginning of October. That's when the state set the window. I will stop sharing. Do you have questions?
Nope.
I know you asked them along the way.
Yes, we
I
did.
have everyone for that. Okay, so if questions come up, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to make some great gains this year. So I did want to show you one more thing. Oh, I didn't cue it up. Hang on. I wanted to show you something that we've been working on since you are the curriculum people. I thought it would be a good idea to show you the updates on a curriculum website just quickly. Don't worry, I'm not going to walk you through every little tiny detail. Okay, you can see it. So we do have an MSAD11 curriculum site. Everything is visible to anyone who searches MSAD11 curriculum. There's a few things that are view only to MSAD11 because they're in early implementation stages, or they're really like instructional guides for teachers. What I'm working on now is drawing out some of that stuff into more like the transparent public documents. I'm just trying to get the framework to be the same across disciplines, and those will be posted for anyone to see at any time. Which has been my goal since I got here, is to get all that laid out so that everyone can have, you know, the curriculum transparency is important. And so I'm trying to get that set up so that everything will work. So this is just our homepage. It does have our updated goals and strategies as a district and just the team that works on instructional support. But the part that I really want to show you is two. One is curriculum guides. So these are this is something new our staff is working on. They're amazing. It's been a lot of work. This is at the K-8 curriculum guides right now. The high school has always had their department level guides already in place. And so I just go through those with them every year. I have not posted them because they have an internal system. But when we go to create the curriculum transparency K-12, that part will be fully posted. These guides really provide, you're not gonna be able to see that, but it's in there for anyone to see. It outlines the instructional resources every teacher at each grade level has access to that the district supports. The instructional time per content area, our adopted new report card structure and their reporting standards by grade level. We then took those reporting standards and actually created these report card alignment documents that say which grade level standards fall under each reporting standard, because a reporting standard is kind of like a bucket or an umbrella. And then there's all kinds of little tiny grade level standards that fall into it, because there's like thousands of standards, right? So we created an organizing document so that could be not be confused at all, and we did it for every single grade level in literacy and math. Those are embedded in their curriculum guides. They have data walls that have been built for every teacher in literacy and math, kindergarten through 5th grade this year, and they're learning how to use those with common assessments. So we built those and put those into place. How we're adjusted the use of our common planning time and district grade level meeting time, and then how this all ties to our intervention system. So for example, I'll just, they have the guide, their report card standards alignment document. So this is an example of one. Here's literacy. One of the reporting standards is using phonics and word strategies to read grade level words. And these are all the grade level standards that fall into that. And so they can find that all the way through, and then under reading, and then it goes through each of speaking and listening and so on and so forth. And then this is an example of a guide, just so you know how I spend my time and how the coaches spend time and how the teachers contributed to spending time, since you're on the curriculum committee. So an introduction, that's the table of contents. That every teacher went through this with me. The Boys and Girls Club gave us their space, their teen center on our second workshop day, and we spent time together there and went through all these. So like, here's their instructional resources. I know you can't really read it, but you'll get the idea. The content that we have expectations for around time. Their report card, the purpose of our report card, our scoring guide, our grading guidance, that report card for their grade level, their alignment documents, how we work for grade level assessments, and what time of year, how they access their data walls. Data walls are all conditionally formatted, so as they put data in, it tells them if the student is proficient partially or not. And it's all color coded, so they can very quickly see, like if I'm working on phonics, I can see quickly where my students are not proficient, and I can pull out the students who aren't in a small group and work with them. And I don't have to like just stare at numbers. Not everyone's great at staring at data tables, so everything's color coded, so it's easier to access.
Crossed right now.
And then how they use their time. And then we have a whole section on literacy guidance, which is how they implement handwriting, how they implement small group reading, how they do whole group assessments, how they do modifications that we've all agreed to, so on and so forth. Our writing guidance over the units and how to assess and when. First steps, next steps. So all this is embedded, and it goes on and on. Here's math and their planning calendars and their assessment practices, and then science and the scopes, which are these kids. So this is for every grade level.
Did we have this before you?
No, we haven't had it all in a comprehensive document, and that's especially with all the new staff we have this year. That's the thing that keeps coming up year over year, is like the questions are constant. And so we just decided to spend time and put everything together in one comprehensive document. Next spring, the teams are going to provide me feedback about what parts of the document were most helpful, what would they change or add, and that way together we can make some decisions, and then over the summer I can edit them for the next year. So we have this for every grade level now, plus like our Proctor manual for our early bird. We have this for ELA and math at the middle school. We'll be working on science this coming year and social studies.
Angela, you know I'm a big fan, and this is a specific reason why.
Well,
this
it's a
helps
team. It's a team.
Right, the parents that are say, well, you're teaching this. Well, now they can go to these documents
Yeah.
and you can say, well, it's public, so this is actually what we're teaching.
Yeah.
We're
So
not hiding anything. It's all
Right.
here.
And some of the the guides I have on MSAD11 only, they're visible. You can see that they exist because I think it deserves an in-person conversation. And because there's a lot of detailed stuff for teachers, like real details. However, what I'm doing now is pulling from those to create the universal visible document for anyone to see by grade level. So that, because we aren't hiding anything, but I also want it digestible for the public to like, you want to know, I have no problem, call me anytime, but I'm just trying to make it so like what's most impactful for teachers, what's most helpful for staff and parents. And then this is just the other big step, which we'll bring up in the future at a meeting, one of our meetings, is the multi-tiered systems of support. We've been doing lots of training. This is very extensive training. It's already embedded in here. And we now have a 40-page handbook on our multi-tiered systems of support. And it has things like, oh, you can't see that very well, but our vision, our mission for it, the overview, the guiding principles behind it, our decision-making teams, the foundation, the special education, the difference between that and MTSS, which is how we help kids. And then there's 3 levels to help students. And those are defined with very clear roles and responsibilities. And then what we're coming up to now is working on what do the strategies look like, or what we call interventions, what tools can you use, and what are the measures you're checking for understanding, so that they have some choices to draw from. And then we have a flow chart for how this all works, protocols for the team meetings, and forms, common forms across the district K-12 for everyone to use. So that's in this handbook that was just adopted for us to use this year. So if you want to know more about the MTSS system, I'm thinking that would be at least one thing we might want to do in our area of focus, and we could bring some interventionists in for you to talk to, because I know you really like talking with actual live people other than me. And so we could talk with maybe a couple of teachers and a couple interventionists about how it's working. I mean, or in the questions they have and you have, it's a developing system. the intent of it has been in law for 18 years. But every school system, not just us, have been working to refine that system for probably 18 years. And we are trying to get closer and closer to a more comprehensive, systematic approach. So is that something you'd like to learn more about?
Yes.
Okay. We usually also bring the coaches in at some point for you to talk with. And then I wondered if there was any sort of specialty groups that you'd like to be thinking about when you think about budgeting. Sometimes things come up and you're like curious about how that all plays out. It's hard to bring those groups in like at the budget crunch time. Everyone's really stressed. So MTSS has two areas. One is academic and one is sort of behavioral social. So we could actually have two meetings, one with more of the how are we responding to the behavioral and social needs of students through this support system? And then the other could be how are we responding to the academic side? And that would bring you two different types of groups of people in. Would that
Sure.
be of
Yeah.
Yeah,
interest?
sure, yes.
Okay. We always do data, which I know is so thrilling for you, but important. Is there anything else that's come up for you that you've been curious about?
Do you don't have anything to do with the STARS program and the program for the kids with, what do you call it? The other program.
The steps, yeah, the steps programs.
Steps, yeah.
So we could either ask for that at the full board meeting, or if there's a teaching and learning component to it that you're curious about,
Yeah.
then we could think about how that might intersect with the curriculum.
I'm just curious, because I always like I don't know, the lost sheep, the ones that are out there and in a different way, and how they can be brought in and any success with it.
Let me check in with the director of special services. If it's connected to teaching and learning, then it's okay in this group. There are a couple policies I'm gonna wanna bring to the table. I wanna look at a couple, we did one mastery of grading policy last spring. I'd like to bring up, we're due to do a few more of the kind of grading policies. I'd like to have an opportunity to bring those forward.
Yeah, that popped into my brain just as you were saying it.
And then also I want to double check on the timing of I just lost it. Clearly we're overdue. Our time is over. I will get back to you. There's another policy bank that I wanted to bring to you, and I cannot for the life of me remember it right this minute.
Access to that.
Can you? Is it open? I can give it to you. I'll get back to you on what that is.
Okay.
Any other requests off the top of mind?
It seems like there's a big special ed program in the high school too, isn't there? We've needed special ed.
We have we provide a lot of services in the high school.
And I guess I'm just always interested in some anecdotal things and how things come to success.
So Diane, one thing we could do here that might actually get to both of your prompts is how are we meeting the needs of our students who have IEPs?
Yeah,
Across the system? What are that level of services? How do we know if we're being successful or
Yeah,
not? What are we
yeah.
using curriculum wise?
You just have to be careful because you can't.
Identify
can't
any
talk about-
student.
oh, of course.
Right, so
Yeah.
it does make it difficult to look at data and improvement because it's tricky. It's
Yeah.
a legal issue.
Yeah, so I would have to have Alicia here with us, who's our director of special services, and I'd have to plan that out to make sure we don't accidentally reveal something we
Right.
shouldn't.
Yeah.
So if you give me a little time to think that through, I can propose something.
And just, yeah, it's just, how, what we're moving towards, any new programs or ideas that you folks are thinking of, I just like to know about them. I think it's exciting.
Well, it does fall into this like web-verse universe of how we're providing supports to students. So as long as when we attend to it, we are very clear about what our purpose is for that meeting and what we're staying focused on, then we can. But I want to make sure I co-design that with Alicia. I'll bring it to Matt as the chair to make sure we preview it first.
And success is always exciting, but success can be, somebody can just be toddling along and they go out and just what they've done in school just serves them well and they go on to great things.
There are different definitions.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so any other ideas? We can always develop them over time. This is not the only time we'll bring it up. But I do want to start getting some people prepared for visiting with you.
What curriculum did we implement? This just a refresher this year, brand new stuff that we budgeted for that's implemented.
Brand new. We didn't implement any, I'm just double checking my brain here. We didn't implement any brand new program to support curriculum. This year. We did implement a refined multi-tiered system of support. We did refine our curriculum and our data collection practices and grading practices at the elementary level to support the new report card. Those are pretty significant and monumental tasks. And we'll be going through a grading and report card review with the middle school and the high school over the next 15 months. It'll take the report card comes first and we'll work on the grading practices.
Okay, so really nothing to really look at by the end of next school year until.
Oh, you'll probably have a
Just a little
draft
feedback to
report
see
card
how
to
it's.
approve 6 through 12
Oh, okay.
this
All right.
spring. Yep.
Okay.
You're gonna have plenty on your plate.
Yes, you are, Matt.
Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, so we started at 3:38 and we're ending at 4:39. So really, technically, I'm only 1 minute over. Just for the record. All right, thank you so much. Our next meeting is the second Tuesday of October, which is going to be right after Indigenous Peoples' Day.
Oh,
Whatever day that is.
I think it's the 12th.
12,
you
sounds
can
good.
still
to
do
me.
it the 12th. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's the 11th.
It's not the 10th?
This year.
I don't know.
Whatever the second Tuesday is.
I'll tell you.
Oh, I think the holiday is the
It's the
10th.
11th.
Yeah.
I was one. day off.
October 11th.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
right though. The holiday was the
No,
10th.
you weren't right. Just kidding.
Okay, thank you. Barry, are you all set?
I'm not.
Okay.
So